The year is 2003, and walking into any electronics store felt like entering a cathedral of gaming. Towering shelves lined with colorful PC game boxes stretched toward the ceiling, each one a promise of digital adventure waiting to be unwrapped. These weren't just software packages, they were artifacts. The hefty weight of a new release in your hands, the satisfying crack of breaking the shrink wrap, the smell of fresh cardboard and that new manual scent. Inside each box lay treasures that today's gamers will never experience. Thick instruction manuals filled with lore and artwork, fold-out maps you could hang on your wall, soundtrack CDs, and sometimes even cloth maps or metal figurines. The PC gaming industry generated over $4 billion annually from these physical sales, with major retailers like CompUSA, Electronics Boutique, and Software, etc., dedicating massive floor space to game displays. Publishers employed armies of graphic designers whose sole job was making box art so compelling that browsers would become buyers. This was an industry built on the tangible, the collectible, the permanently owned. Then Valve Corporation launched something called Steam, and within a decade, this entire world would become as obsolete as the horse and buggy. Steam didn't arrive with fanfare or industry applause. It crashed the party uninvited and unwanted. When Valve forced Counter-Strike players to install this mysterious new client in 2003, the gaming community erupted in rage. Forums filled with complaints about always online requirements, authentication servers, and the radical concept of games existing only as data on remote servers. The very first Steam reviews were overwhelmingly negative, with players calling it bloatware, spyware, and worse. But Valve had a secret weapon that would prove unstoppable: convenience married to irresistible pricing. While physical games maintained their $60 price points to cover manufacturing, shipping, and retail markups, Steam could offer the same titles for $40, $30, sometimes even $20. The math was simple: eliminate the middleman, eliminate the physical production costs, and pass some savings to consumers while pocketing higher profit margins. Early adopters who grudgingly installed Steam for Counter-Strike updates soon discovered something magical: instant gratification. No more driving to stores only to find games sold out. No more waiting for shipping. Click, download, play. The convenience was intoxicating, even if it meant sacrificing the ritual of ownership that had defined PC gaming for decades. The physical media industry initially dismissed Steam as a niche platform for Valve's own games and a handful of indie titles. How wrong they were. Valve's masterstroke wasn't just creating a digital storefront, it was building an ecosystem that made physical games feel archaic by comparison. Steam's 2004 launch of Half-Life 2 exclusively through their platform forced millions of gamers to create accounts, essentially holding Valve's most anticipated sequel hostage until players embraced digital distribution. But the real killer feature emerged in 2005: automatic updates. Physical game buyers had endured years of hunting down patches on dial-up connections, burning CDs, and manually installing fixes that sometimes broke more than they repaired. Steam games simply updated themselves overnight. No fuss, no technical knowledge required, no keeping track of version numbers or compatibility patches. Meanwhile, the platform began showcasing user reviews, eliminating the guesswork that came with buying games based solely on magazine reviews and box art promises. By 2007, Steam hosted over 13 million active accounts, each one representing a gamer who was slowly being weaned off physical media without even realizing it. The death blow came disguised as generosity: Steam sales. Starting in 2007, Valve began experimenting with deep discounts that made physical retail pricing look absolutely ridiculous. The first major Steam sale offered popular titles at 75% off, prices that brick-and-mortar stores couldn't match even if they wanted to liquidate their entire inventory. These weren't clearance sales of unwanted games. These were premium titles, recent releases, entire publisher catalogs offered at prices that defied traditional retail logic. The famous Steam summer sales became cultural events, with gamers planning their purchases months in advance and communities sharing wishlist strategies. Physical retailers watched helplessly as customers used their stores as showrooms, examining games in person before going home to buy them digitally for half the price. GameStop's PC game sections began shrinking visibly, with floor space reallocated to console games and used sales that offered better profit margins. Best Buy reduced their PC gaming aisles from entire walls to single shelving units. The writing was on the wall, and it was written in bold discount percentages. Publishers initially resisted this digital revolution, but Steam's numbers proved impossible to ignore. By 2008, the platform processed over $1 billion in game sales annually, with profit margins that made traditional retail relationships look like charity work. Physical games required manufacturing costs, packaging expenses, shipping logistics, retail partnerships that demanded 40 to 50% markups, and the constant risk of overproduction leading to costly returns. Digital distribution eliminated every single one of these pain points while providing detailed analytics about customer behavior, purchasing patterns, and engagement metrics that physical sales could never match. Major publishers like Electronic Arts initially tried to compete by launching their own digital platforms, but Steam's head start and user base made it the de facto standard for PC gaming. The platform's DRM system, once reviled by consumers, became a selling point for publishers worried about piracy. Steam's authentication servers made game copying nearly impossible, addressing an industry concern that had plagued physical media for years. When publishers realized they could sell more copies at higher profit margins while reducing piracy, the migration to digital became inevitable. The transformation wasn't just about sales numbers. It fundamentally changed how games were developed, marketed, and consumed. Physical media imposed rigid constraints on developers. Games had to be completely finished before manufacturing. Patches were expensive to distribute, and additional content required separate physical releases or expansion packs. Steam shattered these limitations entirely. Developers could release games in early access, gathering player feedback and iterating in real time. Post-launch content became downloadable add-ons rather than standalone expansions. The platform's built-in community features, achievement system, and social networking capabilities turned solitary gaming into shared experiences. Players could see what friends were playing, share screenshots instantly, and join multiplayer games with a single click. These quality-of-life improvements made physical games feel not just outdated, but genuinely inferior. Why deal with CD keys, disk swapping, and manual patches when Steam handled everything seamlessly? The platform's cloud saves meant never losing progress to hardware failures, while automatic installations eliminated the tedium of running setup programs and configuring settings. Independent developers found salvation through Steam's democratic distribution model. Before digital platforms, getting a game into physical retail required publisher deals, minimum order quantities, and competing for limited shelf space against major studios with massive marketing budgets. Steam's digital shelves were infinite, and small developers could reach global audiences without printing a single box or negotiating a single retail partnership. The platform's user-generated content support allowed modding communities to flourish, extending game lifespans indefinitely and creating value that physical media could never match. By 2010, Steam hosted over 25 million user accounts and processed over $2 billion in annual sales. The platform had become so dominant that Steam Key became industry terminology for digital game codes, even when sold through competing services. Physical PC game sales had plummeted to less than 10% of total market revenue, with most remaining box sales occurring in regions with limited internet infrastructure. The final nail in the coffin came with Steam's mobile integration and social features that transformed gaming from a private hobby into a public identity. The platform's 2010 mobile app let users purchase and manage games from anywhere, making impulse purchases effortless and immediate. Friend lists, achievement showcases, and game libraries became digital trophies that replaced the physical displays of boxes on shelves. Gamers began measuring their collections not by boxes owned, but by Steam library sizes and total games purchased. The psychological shift was complete. Ownership had been redefined from physical possession to digital access rights. Steam's workshop integration allowed players to create, share, and monetize custom content, turning consumers into contributors and building engagement levels that physical media could never achieve. The platform's big picture mode transformed PCs into console-like experiences, bridging the gap between computer and living room gaming while maintaining all the advantages of digital distribution. By 2012, the transformation was complete and irreversible. Major retailers had eliminated their PC gaming sections entirely, or reduced them to small displays of older titles and specialty releases. The used game market for PC titles had essentially disappeared, as digital licenses couldn't be resold or traded. Game development studios stopped budgeting for physical packaging, manual printing, or retail marketing materials. An entire ecosystem of jobs had vanished. Box artists, manual writers, CD manufacturers, retail game buyers, and warehouse distribution specialists. The very concept of going to the store to buy a game had become as antiquated as renting movies from Blockbuster. Steam's library had grown to over 2,000 titles, with more games added daily than physical retailers had carried in their entire PC sections. The platform's user base exceeded 50 million active accounts, each representing a customer who had been successfully converted from physical ownership to digital licensing. Valve had achieved something unprecedented in entertainment history. They had convinced an entire consumer base to abandon ownership rights in exchange for convenience, lower prices, and enhanced features. The irony of Steam's victory becomes clear only in retrospect. Gamers had spent decades fighting for ownership rights, criticizing DRM, and insisting on the importance of truly owning their entertainment. Yet when presented with the right combination of convenience, pricing, and features, they willingly surrendered those principles without a second thought. Steam didn't just kill PC game boxes. It fundamentally rewired consumer expectations about digital ownership in ways that would extend far beyond gaming. The platform proved that consumers would accept licensing over ownership if the benefits were compelling enough, a lesson that would later influence music streaming, video services, and software distribution across all industries. Valve had identified a crucial weakness in human psychology. The immediate gratification of convenience and savings would always triumph over abstract concepts of ownership rights and long-term control. The company that set out to solve the simple problem of updating Counter-Strike had accidentally discovered the formula for dismantling entire retail categories. Physical PC gaming media hadn't just been disrupted, it had been completely obliterated, leaving behind only memories of cardboard boxes and the faint smell of fresh instruction manuals that today's gamers will never experience.